Good afternoon, dear participants, our esteemed panelists, and our Mr. Rajesh Nath, Managing Director, VDMA India. A hearty welcome to all of you for today's webinar on the CEO panel discussions today. And this topic today is Act Now, Plan Now to Retool for the Future. It's a new operating model we'll be talking today. We hope all you and your families or working teams are all safe and doing well. I am S. Manohar, based out of Bangalore office of VDMA, and would be taking you through the initial part of today's webinar. VDMA is organizing this webinar in association with Bain Company, which is a global consultancy that helps the world's most ambitious change makers define the future. It is present across 58 offices in 37 countries. It helps management teams and boards make the decisions on strategy, operations, M&As, technology, and organizations. They work alongside their clients as one team with a shared ambition to achieve extraordinary results, outperform the competition, and redefine industries. I would like to give you a brief introduction about VDMA. VDMA is one of the largest associations in Europe, present in almost across 38 sectors, and present employing more than 1 million people with 3,300 members. And very interesting, with 32 billion euro of production across all its members. Very interesting is 78% of its production is exported out of Germany. So that's the most important thing. And it has presence in its 128-year-old institution, present in almost 6 countries apart from India, China, Brazil, Japan, Belgium, and Russia. Moving on, the topics for today's discussions, if you to start off, we would have the welcome address from Mr. Rajesh Nath, Managing Director of VDMA India, followed by the presentation by Mr. Amit Sinha, Senior Partner and Director of Bain Company, on the topic Act Now, Plan Now to Retool for the Future. He would be setting the context for the panel discussion, which would be moderated by Mr. Rajesh Nath. And Mr. Rajesh Nath, along with him, would be the few panelists, Mr. Dattatri Salgame, Managing Director, Robert Bosch Engineering Business Solutions, Mr. Vivek Bhatia, Managing Director, ThyssenKrupp India, of course, Mr. Amit Sinha, Senior Partner, Director, Bain Company, and Ashutosh Vaidya, from currently up till now, Chief Technology Officer of Tata Technologies, followed by Q&A. Now we would have Mr. Rajesh Nath giving his welcome address. Let me give a brief introduction for him. Mr. Nath has been very strongly promoting the Indo-German relations and has been the face of VDMA for almost 20 years now. He has more than 3 decades, close to 3 decades of experience working in various industries in Germany and India. The most significant achievement in his career, he's been accorded the Cross of the Order of Merit, the highest civilian order from the German president, for promoting the Indo-German trade in between the two countries. Before I pass it on to Mr. Nath, I would like to remind all of you, all the attendees, that you can post all your questions under the question section, and they would be answered in the last leg of the webinar. And also, I would like to inform you that this webinar is being recorded, and just for your security, for your purpose of information. Over to you, Mr. Nath.
Yeah, thank you, Manohar. Good afternoon, members and industry leaders. Welcome to the CEO's discussion on Act Now, Plan Now to Retool for the Future, being organized by the German Engineering Federation, VDMA, in association with our esteemed knowledge partner, Bain Company. It is a proud privilege for me to welcome Mr. Amit Sinha, Senior Partner and Director, Bain Company. Welcome to you, Amit. Mr. Dattatri Salgame, Managing Director, Robert Bosch Engineering and Business Solutions. Welcome, Dattatri. Mr. Vivek Bhatia, Managing Director and CEO, ThyssenKrupp Industries India. Welcome to you, Vivek. And Mr. Ashutosh Vaidya, till recently Chief Delivery Officer, Tata Technologies. Welcome, Ashutosh. Pleasure having you all with us today. Friends, 4 months ago, nobody would have thought that the whole world would come to a standstill. The infamous coronavirus has spread across the globe like wildfire in a short period. The virus has not only infected people across 188 countries, but has had a dramatic impact on various industries, the share markets, corporates, and even on one's daily life. COVID-19 has impacted global health, global supply chain, and above all, global economy. Many pundits have declared COVID-19 as Black Swan of 2020, with global economies staring at one of their worst ever recessions. Friends, a Black Swan is an unpredictable event that is beyond what is normally expected of a solution. The underlining takeaways from this term are, first, these events are extremely rare and cannot be predicted beforehand and come with severe consequences. Secondly, they cannot be predicted. The only way to escape or reduce damage is to have a robust system in place. For business leaders, the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated unprecedented changes. More than ever, the health of businesses is urgently and visibly linked with the health of the workforce, the health of our society, as well as the health of our planet. Previously unimaginable shifts in our daily lives are compelling companies to adapt quickly and identify creative, unconventional ways to operate and survive. Worldwide uncertainty makes it more difficult for leaders to find their footings, and those who like to operate from a place of clarity are finding few ports in this global storm. With so many unforeseen factors colliding at once, it is quite a challenge for the CEOs to chart a clear way forward. The question most leaders are facing then is, how do we move forward in such uniquely uncertain circumstances? Friends, our CEO panel discussion today, Act Now, Plan Now to Retool for the Future, is an endeavor to help leaders drive business effectively during major disruptions. We look forward to an interesting and educative 60 minutes with prominent industry leaders to understand their views and thoughts on this. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Nath, for setting the context for today across. And let's take the first poll before we proceed further. And I would request all the attendees and the participants to give their opinion. So in the post-pandemic era, in the post-COVID-19 pandemic era, to focus on what are the where are the areas that I need to focus on for improving myself? Whether is it increasing automation, improving demand by focusing on customers, undertake cost reduction measures, or the safety of employees. So let us see what are the preferences the participants or the attendees prefer. So let's give at least 25-30 seconds for the participants to give their opinions. So another 10 seconds. So I would close the poll now and show the results. Okay, interesting. The majority of the people, 44% of the people prefer improving demand by focusing on customers. And the second preference is safety of employees. Of course, the third is increasing automation, and thereafter cost-cutting measures are the last priority. So it is a clear indication that customer demand in the market is the most important. Dear friends, now we move on to the real act storyboard. The Act Now, Plan Now, and retooling for the future. We would have the presentation from Mr. Amit Sinha and then followed by the panel discussion. So I would introduce all the panelists, including Mr. Amit Sinha right now, so that thereafter Mr. Nath could anchor the panel discussion and take it forward. The first the first panelist I would be introducing today is Mr. Dattatri Selgame, Managing Director, Robert Bosch Engineering and Business Solutions Private Limited. He's also responsible for in the business area engineering, IT, digital innovation, and local strategy across Vietnam and Mexico. Prior to this role, he was responsible for strategy, M&A, and new business venture for Bosch Limited. Mr. Dattatri is an engineering and software industry professional with over 25 years of experience spanning across top Indian engineering consultancy companies, a startup and a world leader in automotive. Mr. Vivek Bhatia, Managing Director and CEO and member of the board of ThyssenKrupp Industries India Private Limited. Prior to this role, he was CEO of Asia Pacific region at ThyssenKrupp AG, based out of driving a group activities for all ThyssenKrupp companies in the region, based out of Singapore. Before joining ThyssenKrupp, Mr. Vivek was at Boston Consulting Group, based in India, as a member of the leadership team for sustainability, industrial goods, corporate development, and operation practices, including engineering products and project sector. Apart from his full-time role at ThyssenKrupp, Vivek also is a non-executive director on board of JMM Fodler and also a member of FICCI Bioenergy Committee. He holds an MBA from IIM Calcutta, MTech, gold medalist from IIT Delhi, and BE honors from University of Delhi, a distinguished professional. Next would be Mr. Ashutosh Vaidya, till recently a Chief Delivery Officer of Tata Technologies Limited, a senior business leader with over 34 years of experience in global services, consulting, technology industries. He has a solid track record of transforming large businesses with $3 billion in revenue and 27 more than 27,000 team members across. Ashutosh is also an electronics engineer with a PGDM from IIM Ahmedabad. Mr. Amit Sinha is a senior partner based in the Delhi office. Amit has 17 years of management consulting experience in advising private, public, and MNC firms, as well as the Indian government. He specializes in growth strategy, performance improvement, and turnaround markets and full potential strategic implementation, commercial due diligence. Amit started his career at the Boston office in 2002 and moved to India in 2006 to help start India office. Prior to this, he was at iGate, Patni. He started his career at Tata Motors. He holds a dual MBA in finance and strategy from the Wharton School of the University of Pennsylvania, when he was named a Palm Scholar and received the Siebel Scholarship. He has done his B Engineering, Electrical and Electronics Engineer from Birla Institute of Technology. So I welcome all the panelists. I'm sure with the enlightened panelists, it would be an interesting discussions. Before the panel discussion, we'll have Mr. Amit Sinha give the presentation for the setting the context for today's webinar and Act Now, Plan Now, Retool for the Future, which is a new operating model. Over to you, Mr. Amit Sinha.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Manohar. Thank you, Rajesh, and thank you to the audience for having me share my views. And great to be sharing the panel with Dattatri, Vivek, as well as Ashutosh. And Ashutosh I've known as a friend, as a client. So hopefully we'll bring some common themes together as we talk about these topics. This all started with Ashutosh and I talking about it, and then we pulled Rajesh into this discussion that, hey, this crisis is unprecedented, as we all call it, and it's changing our views, our ways of working significantly. And we started comparing ourselves, this crisis, to what we have seen in our career in the recent years. And 2008, all of you recall, global financial crisis comes to memory immediately. And I'll just put perspective before I go forward. Global financial crisis in 2008, the world GDP shrunk between 2008 and 2009 by just 0.1%. So 2008 to 2009, world GDP shrank 0.1%. IMF for 2020 has already predicted the world GDP will shrunk at least 3 to 5 percentage points vis-a-vis an expected growth of 3%. So you're talking a gap in world GDP from a demand point of view, which would have been significantly higher. Instead, you're getting a 5% potentially shrinkage. So I'm glad to note your poll question that why demand, why getting industrial and consumer demand back is top of priority for you. With that context, but it's also important to know that crises take time to recover. GFC, companies took 12 months to come out of it. An average company took 12 months to come out of the recession of GFC. this crisis, this contraction is 30 to 50 times bigger if you believe the numbers. But there is a multiplier effect. When the trajectory changes, you automatically get much bigger impact. So we expect at least 24 months of tough time ahead. Some industries would be fast out, some industries would be slow out. But with that context, what should CEOs do as you think about the next 12 months and the following 12 months? There are multiple things that you can't control, but there are few things that you can. And we call this retooling of the CEO skill set. How should you think about your own skill set to operate through these tough times? And the framework we use is act now and plan now. Act for what you can do now, and how should you plan for the next following quarters? So with that context, let me go to, I've got just 6 slides, and I love to walk them through quickly so that all of us have a chance to go through the panel discussion moderated by Rajesh, and hopefully we can address some of your top of mind questions as well. So Manohar, if you don't mind, go to the next slide. The world has changed, as I mentioned. Big changes are coming. End of globalization, premiumization, flight to value, contactless buying and selling, home as the center of consumption. I'm sure you've felt that in the last 3.5 months. And increasing savings, given what has happened to everybody's salaries, compensation, migrant workers, dipping into their savings to actually survive in the last few months. And for example, end of globalization is not a phenomena that is new. It started with Brexit. What Trump started to do when he came into power, US-China war. There's a huge push toward nationalization, but this pandemic has forced everybody to think about the global supply chain. How can we be independent of the disruption that's caused by issues in another country? And we'll see more and more of nationalism actually come through. The Atmanirbhar, the self-reliance message, the plan that has been revealed by Prime Minister Modi actually talks exactly to the point of end of globalization. We grew up in a period of globalization from late 80s, early 90s till mid of 2015, 2010 decade, 2015, 16 till Brexit and other things came up. But we feel that the next 5 to 10 years will have a mixed impact on globalization overall, probably shrinking down of globalization and more pronounced effect of nationalism. I'll take one more of this contactless buying. I'm working in steel and metals and auto and services and engineered products space. Many of these customers, many of these clients never thought of contactless buying in their all growing up years. Now suddenly saying that, hey, we need to have a channel, a model to actually make contactless buying happen. Can you believe contactless buying of steel, contactless buying of multiple other commodity products that have a high touch point with different stakeholders? So the world has changed, and each of these things has a multiplier effect, second order domino effect. So let me just change the perspective to the next slide, Manohar, if you don't mind. This is our analysis of roughly 4,000 firms, global analysis. What it shows you is that roughly, as we call, why waste a crisis? We are going through a crisis. It's an opportunity for all of us to actually learn from the historical lessons and apply it to current context and hopefully come out stronger. The key lesson is that not everybody does not give the same performance from the downturn. GFC crisis, 4,000 firms analyzed. There are 3,500 firms which did not create value, but there are other 500, 400 which actually became winners. What did they do? What did they do to come out as emerging winners is an important learning for all of us, and I'll try to cover some of it. The learnings differ by industries, learning differ by geographies, learning differ by segment that you pursue. So there is no one size fit all, but simplicity, I'll highlight to you before we move forward, is there are only 2 kinds of strategy that work in the world, as we simply state that. We call it the Walmart strategy or the Apple strategy. 65% of the time, the lowest cost allows you to beat your competition. Any industry, any geography, any segment. 35% of the time, it's about differentiation. You make a product like Apple does, and you always get the premium and the market position that nobody else can ever attain. Either you have a cost leadership or you have a differentiation. As you think about the winners and losers, you think about what do you have? Do you have the differentiation strategy, or do you have the cost leadership? It will allow you to prevail as you think about of each of your market segments. With that, let me move to, that's the context. World has changed, but there are companies that come out stronger, and there are many companies don't, and they do a lot of things differently. So what have we been advising our clients in this market, in this context? We call it act now and plan now, which is the next slide. Manohar, if you don't mind. The moment lockdown was announced by Prime Minister Modi, I think many of you thought that, hey, I will set up a war room, I will do everything, I'll put my employees and customers together, and I'll start to make sure that all of us come together to go through it. It's only 3 weeks, but guess what? 3 weeks became another 3 weeks and another month, and here we are. As Raj, one of the one of the CEOs said, we probably flattened the wrong curve. We are going through the toughest time on the COVID curve, but the economic impact has been humongous. But I'm sure you did everything right to ensure that you have a war room and every contingency measure to support the employees, customers, and every stakeholder. What about the plan now? Plan now is, how do I think about coming out of recession? If you saw the previous chart, there are 400 companies out of 4,000 that came out stronger. Have you planned enough? And I've talked to many of my clients, many of my clients in different industries. What we find is most of the CEOs get 80, 90 out of 100 on the act now frame. They've done the right thing. They've mobilized everything right. But I would give 40 out of 100 to most of the CEOs. Have they really thought about plan now? And that's where I think bulk of the discussion would be happening, that how do you ensure, while you have the urgent priorities executed well, but have you thought about the important stuff when the economy gets going? And I'll flash on the next slide, which is just something that you probably know. What are the key priorities? We have a 10-point playbook, and a lot of details. If any of you are interested, I can send along. The next page talks about act now. It talks about liquidity, stress testing your liquidity, situation, negotiating with lenders, all the 10 things that I'm sure you have done. Particularly I found 7 and 10, quite insightful. 7 is, how do I use this opportunity to create a sustained cost reduction initiative? Because as I said before, 65% time, if you have the right cost structure, you will have the ability to capture that demand, the small demand that exists in the economy. And then playing offense, everybody's defense, but what can you do to acquire more customers? What can you do to negotiate better with your suppliers and convert that special supplier to your side? How can you get that trader, moving towards yourself rather than, or dealer coming to you rather than, your competitor? I think 7 and 10 stand out as something that I would encourage you to think if you have not done it. But most CEOs have done a really good job of act now. 80%, 90%, in terms of what they have achieved, what they have done. But as you move to the plan now, which is the next slide, there is a lot to be done. It's about prediction, it's about adaptability, and it's about resiliency. And as you think about what should I plan for, a big question, many of my auto clients have asked me, and I'm sure a big proportion of your the audience here is for, somehow directly, indirectly connected to the auto ecosystem. I know one of my friends runs MG Motors here, and he was telling that, hey, I couldn't dispatch thousands of cars because I was waiting for a couple of specific parts from China. That supply chain was disrupted, and it hurt him significantly in terms of dispatching. Everything was done, but except just a specific product component that forced him to not able to dispatch. How do you think about supply chain resiliency is that part? If this happens again, if you move to Malaysia, if it happens to Malaysia, do you have another model to actually survive Malaysian? I hope not, another crisis in that country. So how should you think about resiliency? How should you adopt? How should you predict? That's the part of plan now. And I'll come to my last slide. Given the limited time, I'd love to conclude with my last slide. It's a word wall, but it's a pretty insightful slide that got Rajesh and Ashutosh and Vivek and Dattatri to actually come here together. I think as we look at the new operating model that you as the leaders of your business need to retool yourself. There are 6 elements of this slide. Let me just clear the slide. One is, now, how is your manufacturing? How is your supply chain, customer, new value proposition, as we call intimacy at scale? Can you do what Amazon does at a Walmart scale? Can you bring them together? People in operating model, they're going to be extremely, extremely different. Your business model, cost and M&A, and then data is going to be the biggest driver of knowledge and intelligence going forward. Let me take 1 or 2 examples. It's a pretty busy slide, but let me just take 1 or 2 points here just to highlight what's in here. Column 1, second one, lean manufacturing redesigned to sustain crisis time peak productivity levels. I'm working with a client. We found that we did this COVID analysis. What was your production pre-COVID with full strength, during COVID with X% strength, lower than your full strength? We found, and we adjusted for shift hours, we adjusted by function, we adjust for tenure, managerial, on-site ops. We found that, we got the same production for multiple weeks with 17% less staff. 17. COVID analysis. Then we did this for the other business. We did for the third business. And this is a $15 billion business. They said, wow, we didn't know that so much could be taken out without affecting our operations. And obviously we saved money here. We also passed on some of the savings to people who were working harder, and they were doing more than what they expected to in the past. So you found inefficiencies. You found it, part of that was plowed back into the people who were ready to work harder. Another example I'll pick on column 4. Point 3 again, new task-based workforce model, and we'll talk more a little bit later. Gig economy and flexible talent pools. Like many of our clients said, and it's very prevalent in some of the service industry where cost of goods is 70% people cost. Suddenly they're all working from home. Apart from cybersecurity and workload management, there are issues. Hey, we used to have so many talented women employees that did not join workforce because of family reasons, motherhood, attending motherhood. Now they only have 4 hours. Now, if you're working from home, if I create the right technology infrastructure, can I use some part of their working hours and not only help them, but help us by getting one of the best quality talent in the most flexible way? Gig economy, it's a very, very popular concept in many of the startups, but it has existed for last 20 years in some of the technology industries. And this is just an example of how you actually tap into new talent pool, but also have flexible work models, flexible ways of operating. And we think that what TCS has announced, what Twitter has announced, many of these companies are thinking about, hey, what, if work from home is happening, it's going to help me reduce my retail footprint, energy cost. We need to just sort out the cybersecurity and safety issues, and also make sure that the productivity of my employee stays high. Now, obviously, you have the other adverse side effects of man is employees a social animal, so to say. How do you actually get them together virtually while this pandemic lasts and beyond that? But that needs to be solved together. But I think I would say that the new normal means you will not only work from home more, but also use and tap into other talent pools and other gig economy events or trends that you're seeing. With that, let me, I've talked for 10 minutes now. I don't want to take any more time, Rajesh. I'll just hand over to you. But these are some of the things that we are seeing in the market. We have, it's interestingly, the business for consultants is based on industry sectors, right? We see some more traction in some industries, less traction in other industries. But we feel that these topics are becoming more and more centerpiece of how do we solve, especially for manufacturing companies. Because services companies have a different model, right? But the manufacturing companies, which might be more relevant for this audience, need to think about this and how to make the best out of these opportunities or potential threats in a thoughtful manner. With that, let me pause here. Rajesh, give it back to you. This was just a teaser to get everybody thinking, and hopefully we can take it from here.
Thank you, Amit. Excellent presentation. I think some of the slides really thought-provoking, and your concepts of act now, plan now, then as well as the new operating model with a view to make the enterprises more efficient in their whole workspace and their whole planning. And I think was very interesting also about the flexible work model that you highlighted. I think in certain sectors that certainly has, we did not know about this potential, and this has, the whole COVID has shown roads to such potential. Amit, before we start with the panel discussion, we would just run a short poll first. So Manohar, can we have the poll first? Yeah, friends. So the poll is, which leadership quality is most essential to steer an organization in this COVID-19 pandemic period? Number one, resilience, ability to adopt, empathy, and team leadership. So let's see what our audience have to say about this. I think all these qualities are so essential, but I think under the aspect of COVID, some of these qualities may get enhanced. So let's wait and see what our audience say. So Manohar, we can close the poll. So friends, ability to adapt and a whooping 68%. So a high majority feel at this stage the leadership quality required is the ability to adapt in these conditions. And then resilience, certainly very important. Team leadership, building the teams, working together with people, developing new leaders within your team, and empathy. So thank you very much, audience, for this, for your feedback. So moving on to the panel discussion now. So esteemed panelists, the coronavirus pandemic is testing the leaders of companies and organizations in every sector around the world. Its consequences could last for longer and present greater difficulties than anyone anticipated. The prolonged uncertainty is all the more reason for CEOs to have a foresight and reinforce behaviors and values that can support their organizations and communities during this crisis, however long it continues, and prepare them well for the next large-scale challenge. Let me begin first with Vivek and Dattatreya. Vivek and Dattatreya, actually, Lenin, the former premier of Soviet Union, said, there are decades where nothing happens, and then there are weeks where decades happen. I think we are seeing such a situation now. Hence the framing, act now, plan now, I think is so relevant in the present context. I would like to hear from you how you're managing the downturn period and what are your current and future priorities. Maybe we'll start with Vivek and then go over to Dattatreya.
Yeah. So firstly, I think thanks Amit for really very nicely presenting the framework and also contextualizing many of the challenges that we are facing. I think it's really very nicely put. And Rajesh, I think your question is really spot on. It's a very complicated environment, and really nobody, I keep going back to what I was thinking in February, and definitely we could not have imagined something like what has transpired over the subsequent months. It's unprecedented. It is really highly disruptive. And indeed, I think if we go back to the framework, the first couple of phases of the lockdown were really all about just getting our arms around, the problem, the challenges, and really focusing on business continuity, because there were so many things that we had to work on in parallel to keep the ball running. And definitely, I think one of the most important things, which is also highlighted by Amit, was really to understand what does the P&L look like, and how broad and how deep is the damage going to be, and then really thinking through, a series of quick damage control measures. That was definitely one part. And the second part, of course, was it is really a people challenge, right? So businesses need people to be up and running. And we really had to focus on how do we galvanize our teams and our businesses to really be active and also to seize the opportunities and not lose momentum, despite the fact that we had to do this in a virtual setting. And I think we did a few things fairly quickly. One, we were very quick to move people in a work from home mode. We were very quick to get a sense of where all our production was, and also in terms of goods in transits. And the third thing which we did was we had a very tight control on our cash. And I think all three really helped us navigate. And that really put us on a strong footing as we started to open up, because there was clarity on the immediate priorities and actions that needed to be taken. At the same time, I think as a CEO, you can't just be lost in status quo and managing the current environment. Then you'd rather become a chief operations officer. So as a CEO, you need also one lens or one line of sight into how you are going to, build out a new way of working in the new normal, so to speak. And that is where a lot of my time went, but also not alone, but also with the next 30, 40 guys in the organization, just sitting down frequently, going business area by business area, function by function, and really planning out how will we rewire and reconstruct as an organization to make the most of the situation. And I think the results have been very good for us so far. We've actually booked business. Our order backlog has actually improved even during this phase. We were able to book an international order. It beat all my expectations because it's difficult to engage with local customers, but to go out and convince a customer in Africa and get him to buy from us was, I think, outstanding. But also we did something very tactically nice, which was we engaged with over 2,500 customers through a series of complimentary training sessions. And I think that really brought us front and center into all the issues that were going on in their mind, and really positions us well with regards to an understanding of what they need in these times, and also how we can support them in terms of their ramp up, their startup challenges, and also to help them accelerate their respective business. Yeah, so definitely I think act now, plan now, you need to do it.
Right. Thank you, Vivek, for sharing your views, and I think very encouraging to know how the period ThyssenKrupp has utilized and how you've worked together with your teams to utilize this period. So thank you very much. Yeah. Dattatreya, I would like to come to you now, Dattatreya. Robert Bosch Engineering has a huge workforce. So in this period of crisis, now what are the thoughts you have, and what are your current and future priorities?
Thanks, Rajesh. Good view, good framework by Amit. Can't agree more with him. If you look at, we are an product engineering company and a software-rich company, and also heavily dependent on mobility, automotive segment, because large part of our world comes from automotive. Automotive these days is not a very popular word, COVID or not, So we had our own issues even before COVID struck us worldwide, along with the OEs and the structural changes that are happening in automotive industry, which is really long-term and consumer-led and also technology-led. So while we were looking at that, the COVID has made topics a little more worse for us. So it's a double whammy effect from a mobility standpoint. But the good thing is, few good things happened in this, because every crisis throws up an opportunity. So if you look at the structural changes that are necessary for mobility sector, so the mobility sector had invested in long-term or at least medium-term changing engineering projects. So these projects are unaffected by COVID because they are fundamental. They actually signify the survival of or being in the forefront of future of mobility. So these projects continue to happen, and we are big part of these projects. So I did not see a major call-offs of these strategic engineering projects happening in different geographies and happening out of India. The other thing that happened was because if you are doing a lot of engineering, embedded engineering work, you need the target hardware where you need to test it. So when 23,000 people work in different campuses around the world, in Bangalore, Coimbatore, Vietnam, Mexico, Poland, China, etc., we had to get, I mean, there was a generic belief that embedded engineering can never be done work from home, because you have target hardware and you can't test it at home. You have to be in the campus. But this myth was busted in the first month of shutdown. So we were behaving like a logistics company, shipping target hardware to individual houses. We were looking more like a Rivigo than like Bosch. So the hardware went to individual homes, and 96% of our workforce, engineering workforce, continue to work from home and continue to deliver these projects. That was an amazing stuff. And what it proved to not just our company in Germany, to a lot of industries around the world, is that there is a net new opportunity out of India, which is very different dimension. So a lot of business continuity can be assured out of India, in spite of all the negative noise that was around the way India was managing COVID and all that. But it was a huge refreshing fact that India was able to ensure business continuity, especially in the engineering and software space. That was a big stuff. So when I look at my business plan compared to 2020, maybe I'm shade lower, but compared to 2019, I'm still not bad at all, because the engineering work continues, no disruption at all.
Right. Thank you, Dattatreya. And I think very encouraging to know about that, and also what Vivek said earlier, that business, despite of these difficult circumstances, business has been doing or growing, and both of the companies have been able to withstand this crisis or the COVID situation. And as Dattatreya very well pointed out, also net new opportunity out of India. And I think that is what is required, that we explore these opportunities, new opportunities coming out of COVID. So thank you, Dattatreya and Vivek, for this valuable feedback. Now coming to Ashutosh and Amit. Amit spoke about the new operating model. Ashutosh, let me come to you first, and then I'll request Amit also to add on to that. Ashutosh, with these new operating model, do you think for the adoption would be different for various industries? And we are talking perhaps the manufacturing industry, the service industry. How would these differ, and what would be the best way to go forward?
Thanks, Rajesh. First up, thanks for setting up this conversation. I think it is a very important topic, and getting the view of the industry and industry leaders here, and plus questions from the audience. That's going to be a huge plus for all of us. Coming to this topic of how would it be different for, let's say, services industry versus manufacturing. My supposition is that probably for the new operating model, the fundamental, the basics would be the same. It will be common. Right? And if you, let's say, look at a couple of things which are very, very common. For example, if you take, Amit talked about data as a foundation. The robustness of data, getting data available everywhere. So like I think Dattatreya talked about how people from multiple locations were able to put things together. I think that's only possible when they can access common data together. I think that's foundational both for manufacturing as well as for services. Similarly, I think audience pool is very clear. We need to go generate demand, and I think that is true for manufacturing as well as for services. And also in terms of business transformation, be it cost takeout, be it looking for new growth opportunities, and I think Vivek talked about how they won a new business from Africa. These are all things which will be consistent both from services as well as from manufacturing. Now, when you look at the core output, whether you look at a manufacturing line in manufacturing industry, or let's say delivery setup in software, I think need for automation is definitely something that is going to change. It has to grow up for both, right? And also, one of the things that happens today is that we need to make our production groups, the production lines, whether it is delivery teams, far more agile, and ability to work in, let's say, smaller lots, as well as ability to set up and ramp them down quickly. Because I think you don't know when the demand will come in, where it will come from, how big that will be. We'll have to make sure that that is very, very flexible and good, right? And one critical thing that I noticed is that in the past, critical resources are often dedicated to teams. So whether it's an expert or a special equipment or tools or software, they were dedicated to teams and often not fully utilized. So in this new model, I think whether it is services or manufacturing, we'll have to make sure that everything is shared. When sharing happens, there will be conflict. So we'll have to pick up and put together some very sophisticated plans and methodologies to make sure there is no conflict and none of them get disrupted. Right? So these were, I think, commonalities for both sides. In terms of differences, I guess in terms of services, the supply chain is obviously the people supply chain. While for Vivek it was more of a product, raw material, and goods in transit. For services, it is the people. So the people supply chain has to be very nimble, very lean, and variabilized. And other thing which Amit called out is work from home. I think it is going to play a slightly larger role, if I may, slightly larger role for services industry. I think the payoff is big. There are a few challenges here and there, but I'm sure we'll sort them out. But net, I think small differences apart, the model is consistent, the framework is good, and I think both services and manufacturing industry would do good to apply and make their operations much better than to fight this challenge of COVID. So that's my perspective.
Thank you, Ashutosh. Amit, we would like to hear your views also.
No, thank you, Rajesh and Ashutosh. You covered most of it. I'll just highlight a couple of points. I think in services industry, the cost of manpower is 65 to 70%. In manufacturing industry, let's say simple thumb rule, 5%. So the new operating model applies a lot more heavily, as you said, Ashutosh, in the services industry. Then it applies in the context of manufacturing, just from a cost point of view. But there are many other benefits, many other factors that play in here. Let me give the example. I think what you touched upon is automation. We talk to any automation firms. You'll find that their value proposition for a service organization versus a manufacturing organization is going to be very different. And there is one subtle difference. If you take out 5 people from a manufacturing organization on the back office, it's not going to move the needle. Let's say finance, not going to move the needle on the cost side. However, if you can reduce the accounts payable days by 6 days or 5 days, for capex, that's huge. Lots of receivables, lot of money flowing in and out can impact your ROCE significantly. So you don't do automation to not just remove the people, but actually have a bigger impact in the manufacturing setup. And I think that has started to make, and it's not that people didn't understand it before, but given the COVID crisis, people are a lot more aware of it and saying that, hey, there's multiple reasons to do it, and let's think about the new operating model a lot more effectively. Let's think about automation, let's think about outsourcing, a little bit different. I'll also highlight the another example of real estate footprint. There was a huge wave towards WeWork, and we know the story about WeWork and how these co-working spaces just mushroomed up in the last, let's say, 3 years, like from nowhere. Now many of the companies are saying, what, do we even need corporate office? If work from home, even for manufacturing companies, corporate office, do we need this fancy office and spend so many crores just to support a corporate office in different cities? Can we also move to a co-working model with the right kind of branding, right kind of and will it help, first improve my cost economics in the short term, but in the long term, it gives my people and me as a firm the flexibility to run the numbers up or down depending on need of the month, need of the quarter, need of the year. And I think that's again, so you will see some kind of a, re-optimization of commercial real estate, leased by the, regular companies versus services companies, manufacturing and services versus, let's say, likes of WeWork and, CoWork. I think that's another example. And the third example, let me just close out, is the importance of the corporate functions will be a lot more going forward. People talk about efficiency, but I will talk about effectiveness. In the new operating model, when everybody is working remotely, you can imagine, how admin has to work, how HR has to work, how payroll has to work. One of the clients that we are working, they're saying that I want to ensure that all my employees start the work at 9 a.m. and finish the work at 6 p.m. And if they need to, take 1 hour lunch, we will make sure that the lunch is delivered that time from a dabbawala. We will ensure the supply chain, like it's in Bombay, so dabbawala will ensure that the lunch is delivered during the lunch hours for those employees. Instead of those dabbawalas coming, so packed lunches coming to office, they're going to be delivered to each home, and there is a cost sharing between employee as well as and the company. They're also thinking about how can we have this, and if a new concierge model, if you have to do dry cleaning, deposit checks, hopefully checks will be gone in a few years. But if you have any kind of need, which forces you to take a break from work, you actually have a workaround. So I think these are the elements of corporate support services that will evolve. It's still early stage. Very few progressive companies are thinking about it. But we are working for a bank. They said, why do we even need a branch? Let's eliminate the brands, all the retail footprint. We will do everything remotely. We will save so much and we'll pass on the benefit as deposit rate or lending rate to our customers. So let me just pause here. These are few new things that we are seeing in the market, and as the new operating model is starting to take shape by industries and by functions. So back to you, Rajesh.
Thank you, Amit. I think very interesting thoughts you've shared, especially importance of corporate functions. I think there is a lot of changes that we would see in the coming period. So thank you, Ashutosh and Amit, for sharing your thoughts. Let me now come to Dattatreya and Vivek. Actually, Dattatreya, let me start with you. CEOs are considering how to retool their companies for a new world. And that will be highly unpredictable. It will be characterized by increased polarization, local market disruptions, and heterogeneous government policies. Now, I think retooling is a much needed reality for all of us. Do you think your priorities are different now than before? And in what ways? Dattatreya, maybe we'll start with you.
Yep. In a way, yes, it pans out different for different industries, as Amit was mentioning. For a people-intensive or a talent-intensive industry like ours, which is engineering and software, the volatility of demand is going to be a big topic as we go forward. So nothing will be steady state because we don't know how the businesses would pan out, and so the engineering world was a little bit insulated from the vagaries of end business outcomes. But I think now that insulation is much reduced, so the engineering world is directly linked to the business volatility. So how do we respond in a very competitive talent market? We would, in my opinion, we would move away from very volume-based hiring, and we'll shift into niche hiring. Automation will play a big role. So there will be tools deployed across, especially in the software engineering world, to get productivity out of automation. So the brute force coding paradigms will be a thing of past. So there will be a lot of automation deployed even in agile development world. So this brings there is a lot more focus on productivity, which is going to come into software industry, which was not a very popular word. Productivity was not a very popular word in software industry in the past, but this would be spoken a lot more. So what we may have to get used to is the supply chain of engineering and software will also get a certain degree of redefinition, because if you have an extremely scaled up one center which is delivering engineering for you, and your products are extremely dependent on that center for your go to market, it's a big risk. It is perceived as a risk because you never know, which country, what scenarios they face. So if you look at, for example, fortunately, we have a center in Vietnam, which is about roughly 3,000 people, one of the largest centers for us in Vietnam. You would have seen in the news that Vietnam has flattened the curve, or there was no curve at all for them. So there have been not a single instance for last couple of months. Everybody is back to work. And if you see that the engineering productivity is very high in a country like Vietnam. So this engineering supply chain would be kind of redefined for the concurrent engineering world. So, but I think Indian engineering industry is the most agile and most vibrant one. It will adapt. So there's few things: the talent landscape would change. Automation will drive the work, and the engineering risk will be redistributed into more than one location. That's how I see it.
Thank you, Dattatreya, for sharing these thoughts. I think certainly important aspects you mentioned about talent landscape changing, automation also driving, and with the new changes coming in the workforce and the nature and character of workforce. I think, Vivek, that's an important point also for the manufacturing industry, because when we are talking about the workforce, we have the issue of the migrant labor. So coming back to that, when we talk about retooling, Vivek, what are your priorities here, and how these priorities were different from what you had before COVID hit us?
So I think we have a bunch of different business models. So we have the classic EPC business model. We have a manufacturing model where we are making equipment and supplying those across the world. We also have a O&M and service proposition whereby we are at our clients' ends and helping them run various parts of their business. And I can say in almost every aspect of our operations, we are rethinking how we are operating. So just to give you an example, we are looking very hard at every process that needs some kind of paper. So be it, internally, any kind of approvals that we need to do, or, something as simple as an invoice. And we are going back to customers and saying, why do you need a paper invoice? Can we make it happen with a digital invoice? We are asking our banks. So I think we're just rethinking how do we digitalize, the entire flow of paper and information, across our operations. That's one. Second, I think on the people side, we are rethinking, what are our policies? How do we really operate in an environment where 50%, 60% of our staff is going to be working from home over the next 4 or 5 months? So, working overtime in terms of policies, we don't need a canteen allowance, but maybe we need a broadband allowance. So, thinking about very different priorities on what to really give to our employees, which makes them productive, which makes them, which makes it easier for them to operate, if they are operating from home. And also thinking about flexibility, because, people are at home, they have children with them, they have old parents, and we have to recognize that, the classic 9 to 5 hours maybe doesn't work. So, how do we reconfigure the working day and have longer hours, maybe give people some flexibility to operate even on a Saturday, but at the same time, accommodate whatever challenges they need to manage on the home front. So I think the people policies are really changing. And then thirdly, I think the entire supply chain we are looking at very critically, because it's not enough to say that our supplier is in India. We have to double click and maybe triple click to check where is he getting his raw material or components from, and if he has an electronic component, where is that electronic component buying its inputs from, and what are the risks? Are they sufficiently diversified? Are they well geared up? If our supplier is working, is his sub-supplier working already? What can we do to change that? Many in the supply chain are struggling with cash, so being very targeted and specific in supporting some of the really small MSMEs. If you have a large equipment but you don't have the boards, you're not going to be able to ship it out. So where is the stress in the supply chain, and really working towards fixing that. I think the nature of those challenges is very different from what we were, and to be able to assess, identify, and react to those challenges requires a very different kind of wiring up, a very different kind of line of sight into our business than we had before, and that is really where we are retooling. And then I think lastly, the conversations with clients. Earlier it was very easy. You could spend, plan to take a flight and spend a couple of hours with a client and really, connect with them, build trust, understand what they're thinking. But now you just have that 45 minutes Teams call or Zoom call, and you have to be focused. So also rethinking, the entire sales approach on, how do we really understand better our clients' requirements, and maybe not just at one level, but working across levels of the client's organization in a structured way to really be positioned to address them. And then lastly, I think on the service side, it's again, you can't travel, but the client still has the problem. He still needs the technical guidance. So how do we digitalize our ability to deliver service? Or how do we digitalize and create a virtual control room where we can guide them in the commissioning process or testing process for their equipment? So definitely, I think it's really forced us to think differently. And also it has really forced us to be creative in the way we are coming up with solutions.
Right. Thank you, Vivek. I think you touched upon some very important aspects: the client side, the service side, the supplier, the supply chain. And of course, on a lighter note, I was hearing one of the webinars where they said there is a new designation that will come up, Chief Empathy Officer. I think the Chief Empathy Officer will be in huge demand in the period to come. Coming to Ashutosh and Amit. Ashutosh, I think Vivek also touched upon this point that when we are talking about work from home, there are going to be a lot of challenges also. No doubt work from home appears to be now a reality, especially when we talk about the IT industry, the IT-enabled service industry, where they are talking that almost 75% of the staff would be working from home. And it's not for a shorter duration, but the plan is perhaps to increase it over a longer duration, maybe the next 3 years or so. So it appears that in some way this is perhaps going to be the new normal also. But when we are talking about the work from home, actually, how are you going to measure the productivity and also the workload? How can the workload be analyzed? So I would request Ashutosh and Amit to share their views on this. Can we start with you, Ashutosh?
Thanks. So I think, I really hope that it does become the new normal. And by the way, when you talk of work from home, it does not need to be from our, already overcrowded cities. Home can be anywhere. So benefits of work from home are tremendous. We already spoke about some of these things here. Cost saving, flexibility, larger talent pool, and of course, removing congestion of some of our cities. So that is a given, right? Now, how do we go about doing this? So if you look at, let me take example of our IT services industry. When we started, I think most of the time it was happening that we were working from customers' location in the US. The real growth actually happened when we started bringing work offshore. So that's where the IT industry really took off. And that is one example that I would like everybody, and small or big, everybody to look at it, to say, take a challenge head on, look at it, what you can do, and then bring it forward. So IT industry today has about 70% of its workforce from low-cost location. And how did we make it happen? Very simple rule. Anybody who does not need to interact with a customer or an on-site employee on a daily basis. So some HR people and some delivery people. Those are the only folks who need to be on-site. And every other role should move offshore. That's where, you know, the drive to offshore happened. And now I think work from home is the next paradigm. If you cross that, there is a lot of benefit for all of us. So if you look at it from, let's say, manufacturing and, you know, allied industries, where, like we pointed out, that workforce, which is, if you can only look at people who do not need to touch an equipment, machinery, or material, or a facility. These are really the roles that need to be on site, and everybody else can potentially be working from home. So, but you know, the numbers may not be as large as in IT services, but my sense is that there still be about 10%, 15% scope. And I think, as you know, Amit was pointing out earlier, if we also look at their effectiveness, the impact of numbers might be much, much more. Now, I think the clear point to me is the one shift that we have to do is we have to move away from measuring the inputs to measuring the outputs or the outcome. I think it's a more of a philosophical change. It's a culture change. It's a process change. We don't have to make people, you know, earlier in factories and offices, we need to clock people, come at 9 o'clock, go at 6 o'clock, and all that. Right. Today, work from home, I think we can afford to be flexible. The one challenge that I see is that I think you know, when you're working in an office, it does give you an opportunity to create bonding with your team members, work as a team, collaborate, and stuff like that. And also that the culture, which is kind of that, you know, amorphous thing which makes an organization work. That is a big challenge, which when people are working from home and they don't get together, that is going to be something difficult. And as leaders, we might have to force ourselves to find out ways. How do we make sure that bonding happens? And in fact, I was in a conversation a little while ago, and where one of the speakers said that he actually takes time out to do small chit chat with people offline. And he says, I got to know my colleagues much more today than I got to know in the office, because in office I never spoke to them. So while, you know, we are away from office, if we make a conscious effort, we can build a team spirit, we can create that bonding, and, you know, still make it work. And as leaders, we want to make sure that cultural alignment happens. So if you focus on the outcome and say that this is the work package that you need to deliver, how you deliver, when you clock X hours or Y hours is not something that I'm looking at. I trust you. I want the output. I think then we should be able to set up outcome measuring mechanism, and that's the way forward.
Thank you. I think a very interesting point, Ashutosh. Amit, would also like to hear your views on this.
Yeah, so, you know, I think very, very valid points are raised by Ashutosh, and very thoughtful comment about the output metric. And, you know, we've seen this in some industry, but not all industries are as mature to just, you know, understand the difference between input and output. So great comment, Ashutosh. I think, you know, as I parse this question, the productivity, work from home, I think you have to look at services, MSMEs, and maybe manufacturing large. I think you have to break into each of them will have, you know, different impact. I think, you know, services, IT, and others, given they deal with data, they have, you know, they have the ability to work from laptop. Most of the work can be done through that. That's I think, Ashutosh, you addressed most of it. Let me not duplicate that comment. But as you think about, let's say, MSMEs and large corporation, I think the impact is going to be very different because of the number of people they have, the kind of work. For example, in manufacturing, I would say that productivity is a problem they have not been able to solve in this context, because if a field engineer or a site engineer is spending time on Zoom, he's not doing real work. is actually away from an equipment or a boiler or a turbine or actual machine, that's where his job is. So the more time he spends on Zoom or work from home to interact, it hurts the quality of his work. So how do you balance the two? But you do need to know, he needs to know what needs to be done, and you need to make sure that he's doing the right thing. The role of technology, and you won't believe, small thing, the importance of high resolution camera to capture the imagery of the machine he's working on and passing on the feedback to an expert who's central on other side. I think some of the point made by Dattatri earlier or Vivek, I think extremely important. How do you actually bring expertise by showing what's going on in the process or the equipment or in the line? Very important, and that is still immature. So if you're going to measure the productivity of a field engineer, a site engineer, through how much time he spends on Zoom and the operating model, is going to be a challenge. So I think the point made by Ashutosh is the right point about how do we measure his effectiveness in terms of output metrics. Hey, it doesn't matter how many Zoom sessions and how many hours you spend there telling people about the problem. You got to be solving the problem in the field. And I think the high resolution and gadgets, etc., to support that data capture sensor, but also a data platform where more and more learnings are codified for people to use, site engineers to use to actually solve them, are being used to make them more productive. Is the maturity high? I would say no. Is it very low? Probably it's crossed that threshold, starting to get higher. Now, when you look at MSMEs is a very different concept altogether, because you have very few people. Each person is supposed to do multiple activities. It's not a very siloed, or specialized role. And I think the functional role and the line role they sometimes have to play becomes a tricky one, because they need to be thinking, they need to be doing. And I think that's the challenge that most of the MSMEs will face. And what we are finding is, as we work with our channel partner for some of my clients, we are investing in two areas. How do we actually help them skill better? If they're going to be my channel partner, I need to make sure they have a good product knowledge, they have a good understanding of customer, competitor intelligence. So we are investing a lot of time to help our MSMEs, channel partners, which they never used to be very good at. It was all in the minds of the people, but educate them, skill them, make sure they are capable. So that's one big thing that's happening with MSMEs. And the second part is, we are connecting them to, it's a technology platform like Cashflow, etc., which are getting them cash flows from, let's say, NBFCs, other forms in a digital world. So they didn't need to move around to different doors of banks and say, we need capital to fund some of the business. This is happening through the digital mechanism, and it's helping them improve their productivity in a significant way. So, great point by Ashutosh, but I just want to give some of the MSME and the manufacturing perspective to complement that.
Right, and it's so important also, Amit, because India, we are, as a country, we have a huge MSME structure, and sometimes the adaptability within the MSMEs is not so fast. So I think a very valid point that you raised, Amit. My last question, perhaps I'd like to have the views from all the panelists on that. Of course, we are talking about data, the importance of data. We say data is going to be the new treasure. So we discussed also how data could play a critical role going forward. And with shifting variables used in database decision-making models, can data algorithms help to solve certain key issues? For example, early demand signals or inventory liquidation, supply chain consumption patterns. So that is what we would like to hear from our panelists. Is, in your view and opinion, what is going to be the importance of data, and how can data help as we go forward to solve some of the issues? Maybe we'll start, if you could, each of you could give a short and crisp statement on this. Maybe Vivek, we'll start with you.
Yeah, definitely, Rajesh. I think that's a very important point that you're raising. And in an environment like this, everybody needs a longer line of sight to be able to better react, manage, And that is where data has a tremendous role to play. So, we want to look further, have a better prediction of where demand is going so that we can already recalibrate, how fast we are ramping up. Uh, at the same time, I think we also want to analyze where cost structures are going to go, not just for us, but also for our supply chain to be able to better predict what we are offering in the market, as the price and also assurance on our margins. So definitely in all of this, I think data will play a very critical role. One, to extend the line of sight, and second, to be able to increase the speed of reaction. So we can't wait for people to interpret reports, but rather we need those feedbacks, analysis much faster from algorithms or whatever tools we might have to be able to react to the data faster than we would normally have. So on both counts, I think there's a lot that digital technologies will do for us. Definitely.
Thank you, Vivek. The Tatre has gone up. So maybe Ashutosh, would you also share your views on that?
Yes, sure. I think I would want to take a slightly different perspective. My, submission is that today what is happening is that while we have implemented fairly robust systems of record, the MES system, the ERP systems, I guess what happens is that after that we extract data from them, then put it in their individual laptops. So then data gets siloed. And the single source of truth where everybody focuses and get the same data becomes a challenge. And then when you get into leadership meetings, most of the time is when goes into challenging data rather than analyzing. Right? So data analysts can do a tremendous amount of crunching for us. I think we can leave the job to them. The leadership team needs to do two things. One is very clearly define what problem they need to solve for us. Right? That I think data crunchers and data analysts cannot do. I think that's our job. Second, we have to make sure that across the company we have the discipline of the single source of truth. All of us must dip into the same source of data, cloud-based, something which has what should I call, rule-based access. But every point you touch the data, pull out the data, put it back, everybody should know that this is a pool. And once you do that, people will start, trusting the data, stop fighting on integrity and my data versus your data kind of a thing, and focus more on analytics. When we do that, I guess the point Vivek was making that algos and predictions, they will become very, very robust and effective, and to me, more importantly, acceptable. So if I could shift focus on to saying that, hey, get single source of truth, one point, make it work. So wanted to make sure that we sort of get the basics right and then get into algos and automation.
Okay. Interesting. Dattatreya, to you now.
Yeah. For me, I think data is a resultant of technology. So I think technology is going to play a big role in business process. So it's going to be playing a huge role in places where it was not seen very dominantly. So as I speak, my colleagues in Germany, they are just going to execute a project for ThyssenKrupp. Maybe I can connect with Vivek offline. So they are going to do a contactless sales cycle for ThyssenKrupp in Germany, which is never probably seen as a necessity in the past. So now this is an extremely important necessity now, which they see. So similarly, our COVID solutions, thermal scanners, video analytics, safety solutions, security solutions, all this has huge resonance now in areas which it was not seen. For example, Bangalore airport looking for thermal scanning, and factories looking for thermal scanning. There's a new need in the digital form. So I think the engineering and IT sector, if they are ready for this quasi-engineering, quasi-IT solutions, I think it's a new opportunity. So you will see a lot more adoption of digital in the industry for sure.
Amit, the last word from your side.
Yeah, no, I think most of it is captured. I'll keep it short, just a couple of things. We think in data is 3D. Data capture, data analysis and synthesis, and decisions. Very simple. what we find is, and you have to break the consumer context and institutional context differently. A lot of data is now captured, in the institutional, on the, manufacturing side, a lot of IoT, a lot of sensors, everything is captured. On the FMCG, CPG, retail, huge amount of data is also captured. And as Ashutosh said, there are, difference of maturity in terms of synthesizing, analyzing, and coming up with recommendation, and then using for decision making. What we find is on the institutional side, on the manufacturing side, huge amount of data capture exists, but data analysis synthesis is very weak. And there are lots of systems and processes, and especially I love to, another setting, maybe Vivek and Dattatri, love to get your views. How do you actually integrate the data capture, the data synthesis, and as a result take decision? I think, I think my counsel, my view to the audience would be focus on first to second to third. I think those two bridges are, they have a lot more potential than people think today. There's always attractiveness for new shiny object outside, and this can do SaaS platform, and this can, make your workforce more productive. But we generally capture a lot more than we need or are using, and there is significant opportunity, and applies to MSMEs, applies to large corporations, apply to services and manufacturing. So I'll leave it with that, and back to you, Rajesh. Hopefully, for some questions.
Thank you, Amit. I think thanks to all the panelists. I think we heard your views, some very important and valuable insights. I think very interesting topic, act now, plan now, importance of data, work from home. I think very important topics which we will at some stage or the other encounter as we go ahead, and especially in the pandemic period. We have a lot of questions have come in. We won't be able to take all the questions, but a few selected questions. But before the Q&A session, we just wanted to do a quick poll to understand the feel of the audience regarding recovery path for India. So, Manohar, can we have the next poll, please? So this is when we talk about the economic recovery path in India post-COVID pandemic, we wanted to understand what the audience feel. Is it going to be a quick recovery like the V-shaped recovery, L-shaped long drawn, or a U-shaped recovery, which many are talking about? Or we also have this new term, Nike swoosh logo, where it is going to, like the Nike symbol, the line, the upscale line would take certainly long to attain. So just let's have the views from the audience, what they feel about the recovery path. So, Manohar, can we close the poll now? Yeah. Oh, wow. So we have a quick, we have a close run, in fact, between the Nike swoosh and the U-shaped recovery. So I think V-shaped is perhaps a foregone conclusion. We were very hopeful when the first phase of lockdown started that India would have a V-shaped recovery, but now I think the general feel is the U-shaped recovery or the Nike swoosh recovery. So thank you. Thank you very much. And now let's come to, we've got some very interesting questions. And let me start with a question, Ashutosh, addressed to you, because the person has specially addressed that to you. In manufacturing, control syndrome is prevalent. Seniors and corporates want to keep tab on what employees is doing during the work from home and most of the time. Now, this is a big damper. What thoughts do you have on this? I think this is the typical control syndrome, Ashutosh.
Yes, I think, so the biggest challenge for the leadership is to, get into a mode where we start trusting people for the output, right? And for very long, we've been used to this command and control structure and defining, then that's where I was going, that we have been conditioned to think input. How much time did you spend? When did you log in? Did you stay late in the office, and so on and so forth, right? I think people get, sort of internalize this impact of COVID, I think they will realize that people want to work. And, Rajesh, one of the seminars earlier that you had set up, one comment came in from 2 CEOs. They said, those who want to work from anywhere, and they make sure that outcome is delivered. Right. So I like that comment a lot. And I think that's really something the most of our CEOs will have to get into. Trust their colleagues. Everybody wants to get things done. There will be few bad apples. So I think rather than chasing and monitoring everybody, might be worthwhile to either monitor only those bad apples and see what needs to be done with them, but rest of it, set the tasks, set the goals, and leave it to them. I think our teams will deliver. And I think while it has taken so many years to come to this stage, I think over a period of time, I'm very confident that our leadership of manufacturing will see merit in this and get in that direction.
Right. Thank you, Ashutosh. I think although the question was addressed to Ashutosh, but I think maybe if any of the other CEOs, Vivek, Dattatreya, or Amit, would you like to say something about this? Because I think this is a case which is perhaps very relevant in the Indian scenario. Vivek, would you like to say a few words on that?
Definitely, I think it's impossible, and I think we should not even try to monitor people. What they're doing. Every day, every hour. It's just. I think it's not practical, and maybe it's not even ethical. But definitely, I think management by objectives. That's the name of the game. What we have said to our engineering teams working from home is really, I want 0 idle hours. To be booked during the week, and every week we know what is the output we need. Now you figure it out, whether you're starting at 11 a.m. or you're finishing late. But you have total freedom. But this is what we need you to accomplish, and we know it's possible. This is the normal productivity that we expect. And actually, what we find is in this environment, people have at times even outperformed. From a productivity perspective, because how much TV can one watch? After a point in time, maybe doing some engineering work seems more interesting. So I think people have really stepped up. To be fair to them, I think they've really worked with dedication and have delivered output many times better than expected. So no complaints there.
Right. Thank you. Dattatreya, with the 23,000 workforce, I think this is again a very relevant point also for you and for Robert Bosch Engineering. What is your take on this, Dattatreya?
Jokes apart, this, I have a reverse problem. People say they're working a lot more than they were in campus. So they're clocking more hours at home than they're in office. So maybe some of them want to come back to office because their office time is a lot more controlled, measured. So there is no blur between your work and life. But I think now there's completely blurred work and life. But I think, the one good thing what we see is the leadership has a lot more trust, because what I see is what I trust is going away. So normally there's a tendency of a manager to have people around and look at them and assume that they're working, but you don't look at them now. But you still trust them to deliver. So I think that's a very welcome sign, especially for a country like India, where even a software and engineering industry had a huge influence from manufacturing, because the first generation or first few generations of software and engineering industry was a derivative of manufacturing industry. So this is going to be a blessing in disguise. I think leaders are going to trust a lot more with their teams.
Thank you, Dattatreya. Amit, there's another interesting question related to work from home. I would like you to address that. Is work from home not going to be a key win-win opportunity for employee and employers if implemented in the right spirits? Are offices going to be much smaller now, leading to reduced demand for office space and put down the pressure on the office rentals? So, Amit, I think the main key crux here is we are talking that it has to be, as the earlier speakers also mentioned, it is a lot when we talk about work from home built on mutual trust.
Yeah, And I think we talked about some of it already. So this we are seeing already.
Yes.
And you've seen the extreme announcement from Twitter and TCS and many of the brokerage firms, many of the banks, that they can actually improve, first of all, customer centricity, which for them, all of them matters a lot. Employee centricity, productivity, well-being of employee, and improve their cost structure, which can be passed back as a benefit to customers. And all three things actually, it's a win-win-win: win for consumer, win for employee, and win for the employer. So it's actually a good. Now, but there is, as we think about, there is IQ and there is EQ and there is SQ. Intellectual, your intelligence, your EQ, and then your social capital. This is not going to be sufficient. Employees want to congregate together. They want to spend quality time together. They want to, meet and dissipate their energies. I think we will see the impact of this, the SQ part, come up in future. Is it really leading to higher productivity, or is it affecting employee productivity? And then we need to bring some of them back together. The jury is still out. My sense is we'll learn to strike the right balance between IQ, EQ, and SQ over the next few years. The answer will be very different by industries and geographies. So that's my quick answer to that.
Thank you, Amit. Let me come to Dattatri and Vivek. There's an interesting question also. It certainly is a challenge for leaders to plan now. How would the key employees need to plan now? Like it or not, there would be cost pressures. So will it impact the employee structure? Some thoughts on that. Maybe we'll start with Dattatri.
I think, for a knowledge industry, the big thing is constant learning. So there would be a lot more expectation from employees on learning, cross-domain, cross-application, cross-technology learning. So that's going to be a huge emphasis because at some stage people would think that they are specializing in a particular area. But I think now the cross deployment of skills is going to be essential. So I would say the expectation would be a lot more on learning. And I think the automation would bring certain degree of productivity. So this also would impact associates to reskill themselves to get into new space. So I think it is more about from an employee standpoint, it is more focused on constant learning and increasing their ability to deliver more with less, or that's the game that they have to get used to it. Yeah.
Right.
So just one more thought on
yes, please.
Just one more last thought on this is, I think the industry will also see very different kinds of engagements of associates. I think we are used to having people employed full time all the time, and it's a very fixed employee structure which is existing now. If you're working from home, people can work for more than one context. So you would see industry embracing different forms of employee engagement, fractional engagement, multi-company engagement, etc. So this may become a new normal over a period of time. Not immediately, but I think that this may become a new normal over a period of time.
Thank you, Dattatri. Let's move on to Vivek for your views, Vivek.
See, I think from a people perspective, so far, I think we are a long cycle business. So we, being in a projects business, we really have a longer visibility on where we are headed. And our backlog is 2x of our sales. So we are sitting on a pretty healthy pipeline, which gives us good visibility on the staff we need. So we are actually hiring rather than in attrition mode. So we are looking for more talent, and from our point of view, it's a great time to be hiring because many people are also thinking about different opportunities. So I think, but in general, I think the emphasis really will be on skills, and from a people perspective, we are thinking more on How can we upskill our people to be able to operate in a new normal? How they can work better when they're in an offline mode with a customer, their IT skills, those kind of things. So it's really a skill topic for us right now, more than hiring or firing.
Right. Thank you. Coming now to Ashutosh and Amit, we spoke about data, analyzing the data. Now, many activities in India, especially when we talk about the unorganized sector, if you take, for example, small transporters, kirana shops, small companies, MSMEs, now they have no orientation of data. I mean, to say data is not at all available there. How can they, what would be your suggestion for the unorganized sector? Because for them, actually, data is in a very haphazard manner. Maybe we'll start with you, Ashutosh.
Thanks. I think today what is happening is that thanks to mobile devices, tablets, and app kind of scenario, very lightweight applications are now available, which were earlier not possible for unorganized sector and MSME. So it is perfectly possible today, even for a small unit, to on a cell phone or a smartphone, put together their own inventory, their own workflow. And I think if they, it will be useful for them to try it out. My sense is that there is huge inefficiency. I think all of us in large organizations have seen the efficiency of brought in by automation and IT and technology. I guess same level of efficiency is possible in small sector. Earlier, they did not have the tools and right footprint of software that they could use. Today, I guess on everything, whether you need inventory, whether you need the GST-based billing, or whether you need ERP, I think very, very small footprint, SaaS-based, pay-per-use kind of model software is available. So I would really strongly encourage small organizations to make use of that. There is tremendous value, and easily about 10 to 12% cost saving can be achieved purely by IT-based automation.
Right. Amit, would you like to share some thoughts on this?
No, I was just reflecting on some of the work I did with one of my clients in the rural space. We mostly in the tractor space, and if you have an Android, you could phone, you could do Uber for tractors. And it has an average tractor gets used 300 hours a year. If a rich farmer can rent out his tractor to a poor farmer for 500 rupees an hour, they both benefit. He gets some money, 300 hours goes to 400, 500. And the poor farmer can have mechanization, at a fraction of the price of a tractor. This is all achieved exactly the way Ashutosh mentioned, very lightweight application in the most, laggard part of the, technology and maturity as well as telecom intensity. And it's possible. So as you talk about Kirana stores and you talk about this, I go to Kirana stores and Paytm is prevalent, right? WhatsApp has become the de facto way of communication. You send the order, it's ready, you make the payment, we make the payment, they deliver. So it's in a way, data is at play in unorganized fashion in discrete forms of application. WhatsApp is going to launch a payment mechanism soon. It's just stuck in the regulator. So you'll see how the unorganized sector is using small lightweight applications, apps to actually make it efficient for themselves as well as for their consumers. So it's already happening. You don't need to have a big bang SAP application to make that happen, but it is happening in bits and pieces, and I think that's the way it will continue. It's not going to be major applications.
So thank you very much. I think thanks to our speaker Amit, as well as all the panelists, Vivek, Dattatreya, Ashutosh, and Amit also. And thanks to all the CEOs and the participants who joined us. In fact, we had a full house today, and a large majority of the participants stayed with us for quite some time. Friends, the term VUCA, when we talk about volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous, has hit us hard when we look at this crisis. Not only products, but services and processes need to change. The companies have to change more fundamentally. Today's business leaders need the ability to see through the chaos, to have a clear vision for their organization. As the captain knows how to navigate the ship through storm, the industry leaders must also guide their company through choppy waters. I would like to conclude with a quote from John Maxwell. He said, "The pessimist complains about the wind. The optimist expects it to change, but it is the leader who adjusts the sails." Leaders must define the direction of their organization, its mission, values, and strategy, and like the captain, shed the unwanted weights if required to keep the boat afloat. Friends, our participants also, we have some interesting webinars also lined in the next few days. Do stay connected, join us for the webinars. And once more, thanks to Bain Company. Thanks, Amit, for partnering with VDMA. Thanks to Vivek, Dattatreya, Ashutosh for sparing your time and being with us. And most important is sharing your thoughts and experience. I think there was a lot of value addition for our participants today. Manohar, thanks for setting this so that it went off seamlessly. So friends, stay well, stay safe, stay alert, and above all, stay optimistic, and wishing everyone a webinar-free weekend then. All the very best. Have a nice evening. Bye. And thank you again
so much. Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you, Rajesh. Thanks everyone. It was wonderful party.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.